Hey everyone, making 10 times your money I don't think has ever been as low risk as it is right now with Bitcoin. Let me tell you what I mean. So way back I used to read a bunch of books about investing, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago. And one book I read was someone was talking about, the fastest way to make $1 million is to have $10,000 and find two things that go up 10x. And I thought, well, that's ridiculous. Of course, 10 times 10 times 10 turns $10,000 into $1 million. But that's the whole point. It's really hard to find things that can go up 10x in value that don't have ridiculous risk. And so in all the time I've spent investing and researching investing, almost never do you come across an asset that has 10x potential that is not paired with extremely high risk. And so that's the reason I don't invest in very many things, is because usually, you have to take a lot more risk than it's worth in order to get the upside, and therefore it just makes more sense to invest in the S&P 500, which is an index of the top 500 U.S. companies. And that way it doesn't matter who wins because you own a piece of all of them. But of course, in that world, you're going to maybe double or triple your money over 10 years. You're not going to 10x your money because that would take, many decades. Okay. So here's the thing about Bitcoin. What people misunderstand Bitcoin in two ways. One, they think the upside is already gone. They're like 100,000 a Bitcoin. How much higher can it go? Well, Bitcoin's only worth $2 trillion and gold is worth $18 trillion, 9 times as much. So if you're trying to make 10 times your money with Bitcoin, you can get to 9 times your money just by Bitcoin getting to the same price as gold, which is not, and Bitcoin's like way superior to gold in numerous ways. So a lot of people look at the price of Bitcoin and they say, okay, $100,000 a coin, that's really high. How much higher can it go? And the answer is, as a monetary asset, a global monetary asset, it's just getting started. The US dollar, the yen, the yuan, the euro, all of those things are radically larger in value than $2 trillion. And gold, the most valuable, single standalone asset in the world, is radically more valuable than Bitcoin at 18 trillion as compared to Bitcoin's 2 trillion. So again, Bitcoin can go up a factor of 900%, 9x, before it even gets parity with gold. And of course, we're not looking for parity. We're looking at, that's just the baseline before everybody agrees that Bitcoin's better than gold. At that point, we've tried to figure out how much better than gold it is. And that's why you get way north of a return of 9x. If it's twice as good as gold, you get 18x. If it's 3 times as good as gold, you get, 27x, or, et cetera. 9x times, either 2, 3, 4, pick your number. It just keeps going. So people vastly underestimate how big Bitcoin could get because people just have no concept of how much bigger monetary assets like gold are as compared to companies like Amazon or Apple or Google. Companies, the biggest companies in the world, are worth, between $2 and $3.5 trillion, and there's only a few of them that are that big, companies like Apple and Microsoft and et cetera. But monetary assets are substantially larger than that, especially when you measure things like M2 money supply and things that measure sort of the total amount of the asset. It's just vastly, you're dealing with, M2 money supply of the world, I think, is $93 trillion. It's just like a radically larger number than $2 trillion, which is where Bitcoin is. So people misunderstand how big it could get because they compare it to things like companies, which are they're US based, they're only listed on US stock markets, and they do one thing, instead of comparing it to monetary assets like gold and realize that, wow, you're just dealing with a completely different asset. Also, people radically overestimate the danger and the risk of Bitcoin. Most people don't realize that Bitcoin has been around 16 years, 1/6. It's not, Bitcoin's past its sweet 16 birthday. I mean, we're talking here, Bitcoin's been around a long time. It has been officially approved by the Security and Exchange Commission. It is being sold to the customers of BlackRock and Fidelity and all of the biggest money managers in the world. It is being amassed by sovereign nations. It is, we're just we're way past the point that Bitcoin was this risky new asset and we just didn't know what it was going to do or how it was going to work. And most people, the reason most people think it's in that sort of, they're in that sort of mental frame is because they measure Bitcoin based on when they heard about it. And so if they only really became aware of Bitcoin in the last 2 or 3 years, they feel like it's 2 or 3 years old. It's not 2 or 3 years old. It's 16 years old. It's been around a long time. It's been running flawlessly for a long time. But also, people just don't, they also assume it's mature because they assume the adoption is equivalent to how many people have heard of Bitcoin. So the average person says, well, Bitcoin, most of the upside must already be gone because everybody's heard of Bitcoin. But that doesn't matter. The question is, how many people have actually bought Bitcoin? Not how many people have heard of Bitcoin, but how many people have actually bought Bitcoin. And that is still a very small percent of the total people in the world and even the total people in the United States. But switching back to risk. So what are the risks with Bitcoin? Well, humans need money. So there's not a risk that we're just not going to use money as a technology. So you don't have to worry about the concept of money going away entirely. The money that humans can make more of, they will continue to do that. So if you think that humans are suddenly going to become extremely responsible and stop printing insane amounts of money out of thin air, that's never going to happen. Humans will always be sinful. And if you put somebody in charge of the money supply, they are absolutely positively going to print too much money. 100% of the time throughout the entirety of the entire human history, if humans have controlled how much money there is, they print too much of it and it debases the money and it dilutes in the existing money supply. So you don't have to worry that humans are suddenly going to become super responsible and therefore the existing money is going to work great because humans are going to stop making more of it. That's not going to happen. You also don't have to worry about, everybody's just going to go back to the gold standard. Gold does not work in the digital age. You cannot send gold over a wire. You cannot transmit gold to the other side of the world to settle international business transactions. Gold does not move at the speed of light. Gold, the transactions and the settlement time of gold are incompatible with the modern economy, which is why the modern economy left gold behind, the settlement times and everything. So gold is not going to outcompete Bitcoin. The fiat currencies, meaning made-up currencies invented by governments like the US dollar, are not going to outcompete Bitcoin. If there's a bug in Bitcoin, it'll get fixed. Just like if there's a bug in the internet, it'll get fixed. And people are already trusting the Bitcoin network with $2 trillion of value. Bitcoin is the 6th most valuable asset in the entire world. Gold is number 1 at 18 trillion. There are 5 U.S. listed, publicly traded U.S. companies: Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Facebook. Actually, I think Bitcoin's bigger than Facebook. Anyway, it's of the Magnificent Seven, 5 of the Magnificent Seven are ahead of Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin is after gold, 5 U.S. publicly traded companies, and then Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is the 6th most, or the 7th, I guess, 7th the most valuable asset in the world after gold, and then 5 publicly listed companies. Those are at the top 6, and Bitcoin is number 7 of the most valuable assets in the entire world. So you don't have to worry that gold's going to outcompete Bitcoin. You don't have to worry that fiat currencies are going to suddenly become responsibly managed by fallible, sinful humans. You don't have to worry about the technology of Bitcoin because it's been hammered on a gazillion times by a gazillion people for 16 years. You don't have to worry that the government's going to take it away or ban it or make it go away because they've officially approved Bitcoin exchange traded funds. It's officially recognized as a commodity, including Donald Trump has said he plans to make a strategic Bitcoin reserve in the United States, where the United States itself, the government of the United States, would hold Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset. So they're planning to do that. So all of the things that might make you nervous about Bitcoin, those are all risks that are in the past. So there's just an epic disparity between how clear a path there is to 10 times the value of Bitcoin as compared to how low the risk is to getting to 10 times the current value of Bitcoin. And virtually everybody in the Bitcoin world would tell you it is extremely rare that you get an asset that has this level of disparity between the risk and the reward. Give me 1 second. Okay, so typically what happens is anytime you have a big upside in an asset, it comes with a lot of risk. So if somebody took Bitcoin away from me and said, Joel, you have to try to 10x your money somehow, and you can't use Bitcoin, then I would say, well, I'm really stuck. Like, I don't like any of my other options. But if they forced me to pick an option, I would say, well, the next best option is probably Tesla. Because Tesla, I think, they've got full self-driving technology now. And, eventually everybody's going to be using self-driving cars. So if I had to try to 10x my money with something other than Bitcoin right now, the easiest way is Bitcoin. I think the risk reward, I told somebody recently that I thought Bitcoin has twice the upside of Tesla and half the risk. So it's a 4 times better investment, because I think the upside of Bitcoin is twice whatever the upside of Tesla is, and the risk of Bitcoin is less than half of whatever the risk of Tesla is. So in the case of Tesla, you've got other competitors, which are not a problem as it relates to Bitcoin for reasons I've covered on other videos. You've got what happens if Elon Musk gets hit by a bus. What happens if there's some sort of, epic problem with Teslas and they crash and the government bans self-driving technology, which I don't think is going to happen, but it's, there's all these risks that you have to deal with a company that you don't have to deal with a money. And so monies, in the case of Bitcoin, especially once they've been around this long and are so dominant in what they do, monies have way fewer risks than companies, because companies have operating risks, they have execution risks, they've got legal risk, regulatory risk. There's just way more risks to a company than there is to a money, especially a money like Bitcoin. And it is very rare in human history that you have the opportunity to catch a wave of monetary adoption where a old money is being replaced by a new money. It's only about every couple hundred years. If you look over time, about every 200 years, the Dutch currency is replaced by the Spanish currency, and then the Spanish currency is replaced by the French currency, and the French currency is replaced by the, British currency, and then the British currency, the British pound sterling, ends up being replaced as the world currency by the US dollar. Those sorts of transitions, and I know I did not get the order exactly right, and I think I included a bonus country in there that was not the, world reserve currency, but regardless, world reserve currencies only make that transition about once every 200 years. So you are lucky in that we are going through one of those transitions right now with Bitcoin, and you have the option to make 10 times your money, which is obviously not guaranteed. I just think the likelihood of making 10 times your money as compared to the risk that you invest in Bitcoin and you don't is just better than it's ever been in human history, both for Bitcoin as well as, the probability that it'll work out and with the lowest possible risk on the downside. So all that to say, I think Bitcoin has an easy 10x increase from its current price in it. Now, beyond that, once it, surpasses the value of gold, then it gets a lot more hard to tell. Like, is it twice as good as gold? Does it, do you make 18 times your money? Is it 3 times as good as gold? Do you make 27 times your money? Is it 4 times as good as gold and you make 36 times your money? Again, it gets a lot harder to predict past 9 times or 10 times, because at that point, Bitcoin is more valuable than the current price of all the gold in the world. I should say all of the Bitcoin in the world is at that point more valuable than all of the gold in the world. And gold is the largest monetary asset in the world as a standalone. Now, again, fiat currencies, when you look at like M2 money supply, are much larger. I think it's like 93 trillion. But gold as a single asset, a single commodity asset, is at 18 trillion, which is the closest corollary to a non-sovereign money, meaning a money that is not controlled by government and could be used by anyone anywhere in the world. So I think Bitcoin's got the lowest possible risk to make 10 times your money of any asset anywhere in the world right now. And if I had to pick a second, maybe it's Tesla. But even if it's Tesla, I would say your odds with Bitcoin are, the upside is more than double, the upside of Tesla, and the risk of Bitcoin is less than half. So more than double and less than half results in Bitcoin being, at least in my opinion, a 4x better investment than Tesla. And maybe it's a, 8x, 12x, 16x. It's just off the top of my head, easy numbers were double and half. So anyway, have a great afternoon, everyone. I think Bitcoin is a fantastic investment, even sitting at prices just above $100,000 per coin, because I think it's nearly inevitable we end up going to more than $1 million a coin. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks.